Hello everyone, welcome to my show, Into the Liminal Abyss. This week, my show is actually a recording of the storytelling of the Nain Rouge, Detroit's own Nain Rouge, the Red Dwarf, that I recorded a couple of weeks ago at a convention where I did a storytelling of his history and then a answer session afterwards. So please settle in and get ready, because here on the Liminal Abyss, if it goes bump in the night, growls in the woods, flies in the air, or is something strange, it might just be something that we have as a topic to discuss for the show. So sit back and enjoy, because here we go. Now, our tale does not begin in Detroit City, the Motown, the Motor City. No, on this evening, we are teleported back in time to a location known by the French settlers as New France, what we call Quebec now. And in New France, in St. Louis, Quebec, stood an old castle. And on this evening, sounds of merriment were coming from this castle. There was a great party being held. The sounds of laughter, of soft music playing, of people enjoying themselves for the evening. Now on this night, seated in this castle at a table, were many French officers. These were men of great distinction in the French army who were now stationed here in New France. Now, the host of this party was a man by the name of Hector Louis de Calevers. This was his party. And this party was a celebration because Monsieur Lamont Cadillac had just returned from Old France with a new commission of title. And with this title in hand, he had also been granted 15 acres in Le Detroit, a land far away on the other side of a great river. On this land, he was to build a new colony, a fort, and make it prosperous. Now, as everybody was enjoying their evening and the food and drink was running and everybody was enjoying, an old woman came calling. Now, this old woman, she was a fortune teller. And her accent should have told them where her origins came from, but she would never tell them. But this woman, from the way she was dressed, which was quite elaborate, quite off-putting, but intriguing nonetheless. She had sparkling, glittering eyes. But the strangest thing of all was the black cat that perched on her shoulder and never strayed. Now, when she came to the door, she told the servants she was a fortune teller. And the servant, thinking this would be a wonderful addition to the party, did go forth and found the host of the party, Caladir. And he whispered in his ear, "There's a fortune teller at the door. She wishes to come in and tell the fortunes of everyone here. What should I tell her?" Now, being the host of the party, being an officer in the army, and having much to say about everything, he asked the men present, he asked the party goers present, "Shall we let this woman come in and tell the fortunes tonight?" And of course, they all were in agreement. Yes, let her in. Let her in and let her tell our stories to us. So the servant went back and he welcomed the woman in. Now, before the woman made it into the ballroom where everybody was seated. One of the officers suggested that perhaps she had eavesdropped on their conversations already that evening, so she knew something about a little bit of every one of them. So maybe they should all train spots around the table so she wouldn't be able to tell who was who. So they had no sooner changed their spots around the table than the old fortune teller came in. And once they saw her, once they saw the black cat perched on her shoulder, obviously this had to be an old witch who must know what she's doing with telling fortunes. And they all pushed their palms forward to read. And one by one, she told each their fortunes. But most of them were dealing with their past, what had happened in the past to them, what transactions they had made. Well, when it came to Cadillac's turn, he didn't want to know about his past. No. He wanted to only know about his future. And in his own words, he said, "What do they call you?" And she smiled at him and said, "The people around here, they call me Marie Minouquet la Cerise," the sorceress. So he said, "Marie, tell me my future. Because I don't want to know about my past. I've already lived my past." Now the curious thing is, whenever Marie paused for a moment or seemed to be searching for the answers, the black cat would lean towards her and lick her ear. This sent up a whisper among the soldiers, the men there. She must be talking to the devil. The black cat must be a devil of some sort and is telling her our information. So, Cadillac, thinking that he was already a skeptic and this woman knows nothing about me, said, "Come on, ma bonne Marie, see what you can find on me. Tell me my future. Tell me what is to come." And the old sorceress, accepting of this challenge, said, "All right." So she gathered not his palm, but a brass basin. And once she had placed it on the table in front of her, she removed from her chest an amulet that had a clear liquid in it. Some say it was quicksilver, liquid silver, but who knows? She poured this in the basin and she stared for a few moments. And then she looked up at him and looked into his face. And took a deep breath. And said, "Monsieur Cadillac, yours is a strange destiny. A dangerous journey you will soon undertake. You will find a great city, which one day will have more inhabitants than New France now possesses." Now remember, New France was St. Louis, Quebec. But they called it New France because they had founded a new place to live. "I see many children nestled around your fireside." As she gazed into the bowl for longer moments, Cadillac urged her, bade her to continue, pleading with her, tell me more of my great future. Ah, mon chevalier, I wish you had not commanded me to go on, for dark clouds are arising, and I see your star dimming. The policy you intend to pursue in selling liquor to the savages, contrary to being advised by the Jesuits, will cause you much trouble and be the curse of your ruin. In years to come, your colony will be the scene of strife and bloodshed. The Indians will be treacherous. The hated English will struggle for its possession. They will come at you, clawing and biting, stabbing with their swords, with their muskets, with whatever they can. They want this property. But under a new flag, it will reach a height of prosperity which will never, ever in your wildest dreams will you have imagined. But you will bask in a sunshine climate. But France will claim your last breath. Ah, said Cadillac, but will my many children inherit my possessions? Your future and theirs lies in your own hands. Beware of undue ambitions. It will mar your plans. Appease the Nain rouge. Beware of offending him. Should you be that unfortunate, not a coin of your inheritance will be given to your heirs. Your name will scarcely be known in the city you founded. And with that, the fortune teller bid her farewell. Now on this March night, the party came to a close. And the very next day, Cadillac said his farewells to New France, to Quebec, and made his way to Detroit, taking with him soldiers, vendors, cobblers, people that he could build a community with. And while there were some perils while they traveled westward to find this new land, everything seemed to be right. Nothing seemed to be at odds. And so it was for a long period of time after the city was founded, after the colony had made its roots and the fort was built. And Cadillac had forgotten all about what this old woman had said to him, for it did not matter to him. That was just old wives' tale from a witch's mouth. Unfortunately, he should have remembered her words. He should have heeded them. Now, the colony did prosper for several years, but then things started to take a turn for the worse. And it so happened on a day, an ordinary day like any other, that Cadillac and his wife were walking along what we now know as the Detroit River. Not far from the colony, they were taking one of the many paths. But as they were walking on the path, they passed two fishermen who couldn't help but talk among themselves, because the people on the low end of the living scale in the poverty, they saw things for what they were. Things were not so great in the colony of Detroit. It wasn't. And they said to each other, as they were talking back and forth, Cadillac's time will be coming to a close. For just the other day, my wife saw Le Petit Nain Rouge running about. Now, at the mere mention of the Nain Rouge, Cadillac's wife was frightened. And she grabbed her husband's arm and said, "The Nain Rouge, the Nain Rouge. The prophecy of the old woman, it's coming true." At this, Cadillac laughed off, telling her it was nothing but folktale and giving the fishermen a dirty look. Well, Cadillac, deciding that he was tired of the walk for the day, decided that they should return home. But they had scarcely gone past where the fishermen were when, much to his dismay, a grotesque, ugly, small as a child figure wobbled out onto the path. Said his wife, "What is that? What is that?" And Cadillac, being a man of entitlement, decided he would challenge this creature. This creature, of course, being the Nain Rouge. Now, the Nain Rouge accepted the challenge, and they dueled for a few minutes. Cadillac with his cane, and the Nain Rouge with a stick. Until Cadillac decided it would be in his best interest to strike the Nain Rouge, which he did. Now, having offended the Nain Rouge, the prophecy was said. The Nain Rouge stopped his duel with Cadillac, cackled at him, and went wobbling off the path. Now, the Nain Rouge, as we know him today, has been called a harbinger of doom. Cadillac should have heeded the warning. Cadillac lost his colony. It was taken from him. Cadillac lost all the fortune that his children would have inherited from him. Cadillac died penniless in old France. France claimed his last breath. Now, Cadillac's story ends there. But the Nain Rouge lives on. After having caused so many problems for Cadillac and taking his fortune, on July 30th, 1763, the Battle of Bloody Run here in Michigan, where 58 British soldiers were killed in a battle with Chief Pontiac's tribe. The small tribune that runs the tributary that feeds into the river was said to run red with blood for days after the battle. The Nain Rouge was blamed for that battle. In 1805, the fire that destroyed most of Detroit, General William Hull reported an attack from the Red Dwarf before he surrendered the Detroit fort in the Battle of 1812. Hull reported to his superiors that the reason he surrendered was the fact that he saw in the mist that night the Nain Rouge running among the battlements, the upper part of the fort, cackling at him. And being a man who knew some of history, he knew that going against the Nain Rouge on that night spelt nothing but disaster for him and his troops. In 1701, Detroit's founder, which was Cadillac, he couldn't have known what he was going to set forth. That day he decided to challenge the Nain Rouge. There's many reports over the history of Detroit of what the Nain Rouge has done. In 1996, now you have to take this with a grain of salt because the nightclub attendees were drunk. But they did see what they claimed was a small child dressed in rags who was cackling at them and wearing a fur coat and running up and down the roads. There were several robberies that night that were blamed on the Nain Rouge. The most interesting one that I think that I have heard was the power line. 2 Detroit Edison workers were working on a power line in Detroit. One was on one pole, the other was on the next pole. And one yelled over to the other, "Hey, what's that kid doing?" So the gentleman looked down, and what he thought was a kid, was climbing up the pole. And he said, "You got to get down, kid, get down. Trying to shoo him away." Well, eventually, what he thought was a little kid looked up at him, and it wasn't a little kid. Staring back at him was this filthy face with red eyes and sharp gnashing teeth, preceded by a cackle. And they both watched as the Nain Rouge scurried back down the pole and scurried and hobbled off down an alleyway. They could never find him after that, but within days of that sighting was the worst blackout in Detroit's history, caused by an ice storm. Now, there are many reports of this same creature. We know him as the Nain Rouge. The Iroquois knew him. The French knew him. The Germans knew him as a hobgoblin or a lutin. The Glouskap. He goes by many names, but he always shows up dressed in red with filthy hair, gnashing teeth. Now, there's some people who will say that the Nain Rouge is a harbinger of doom. Whenever he's seen, something goes wrong. But there are just as many people who will say, no, no, no. The Nain Rouge is a warning, telling you something bad is about to happen and you should take cover. Now, the Native Americans who were in the Detroit area had a story that the Nain Rouge was produced from the god of the Detroit River, falling in love with the Lady of Belle-Isle. And when they came together, the Nain Rouge was created. So some people see him as a nature spirit who's just trying to protect and defend that which he holds most precious, which would be our natural resources. Others see him as being a pain in the butt who's just causing trouble. Now, every March, we have the March du Nain Rouge, which is where everyone comes together. It's as close as Detroit's ever going to come to a second line parade from down in New Orleans, because you have this massive wave of people dressed in red who are marching down the street, driving the Nain Rouge out of Detroit. I believe they put them in an old Cadillac and drive them to Toledo and leave them. But he usually has a few, disparaging, remarks to make. But he's represented as a person dressed up in red. I think they do a very good job with the character of him. And that's the whole reason we have the March du Nain Rouge, is to chase the Nain Rouge out of Detroit, so that hopefully with chasing him out of Detroit, a season of renewal comes and we can have a fresh year, and then he comes back. So does anybody have any questions? Way in the back.
When did these marches start?
The marches started, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. And it started just as a grassroots movement. Couple of people getting together with some of the Detroit marching band, not marching bands like the high school bands, but there is a Detroit marching band who does parades like this. Local musicians, local fire performers, and just making a big to-do about it. The first year it was kind of quiet, and then the second year it really caught on, and now I'm guessing there's probably 1,000 people who show up to do this parade every year. And it's, everything is it's very grassroots. The marching band is all volunteers who come together. Any floats that are made made by local citizens who just want to have it in the parade. Everybody dresses in red, and it's just a huge experience. So if you haven't gone and done it, it's one of what I consider one of the best things about Detroit that we call our own, is the March du Nain Rouge, because it's us celebrating our history and doing it in a positive way. That's not violent. That is a celebration of our past, and that that everybody can actually be involved with. And that is generally, it's the third Sunday in March every year. So, but they do have, if you go to March du Nain Rouge, if you Google that, they will have all the information up on the website.
Is there a reason that March was chosen as opposed to Rin?
Because it ties in a lot with spring, with spring being, generally what everybody thinks of as the new beginning, the renewal of the hope, prosperity of everyone. It also has to do with the Passover and Lent to Easter. So it's generally tied into that time frame. So it's kind of like we're forcing out the bad in hopes of the good coming.
And it doesn't have anything in connection with like the Ides of March kind of a thing?
No,
Okay.
no. No. Nain Rouge is very, it's French. It's history is very French. Ides of March, I believe, is
There's
Romans.
negative,
Yeah.
positive,
Yeah.
negative energy kind of connected
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. So yeah, March has got its good points, it's got its bad points, It's always fun because you've got it goes St. Patrick's Day, and then you've got the March to Nain Rouge, and then usually Easter. So it's like, yeah, March is really good, love it. Let's see. Good. I have one more tale that does involve the Nain Rouge. I just have to get my cards all ready. Okay. So I had heard this tale back when I was in grade school, many, many years ago. Don't even ask. That's not gray up there, it's teal, okay? I'm as young as I feel. I heard this story, like I said, when I was in grade school, and it had caught my attention. At the time, it had caught my attention because it involved a horse, and what young girl doesn't love horses? And it reminded me of the song about, I can't even remember the name of the song. Yes, where the horse breaks out and runs away. So, young girl who loves horses, that on her mind. This is the tale of Sunsuki. Okay? Sunsuki was an old mare belonging to Jean Beauregard. She was old. I mean, when you talk about old gray mare, that was this mare. Okay? But this mare, they said, was supernatural. Because this mare would go raid the neighbors' cornyards and could leap any fence. Not only that, but this mare would carry back watermelons to eat at her leisure. She could outrun sticks and stones, and she acted as if she understood the conversations of everyone around her, even going so far as to neigh like she was laughing at jokes that she heard. Now, Sunsuki was the prized possession of her owner. She was his everything. Now, one winter, her owner decided there was a race out on the ice. And everybody entered their prized horses. Well, Jean decided he was going to enter Sunsuki, and everybody laughed at him. That old mare's not going to win. That horse was so fast, she outraced every other horse on the ice. Now, people claimed that this horse was supernatural. But even taking it one step further, servants who lived at the house reported to the neighbors, to anyone who would listen, that from time to time, that old mare and that old man would sit up at night drinking beer, whiskey, whatever he had on hand. And this horse would sit at the dinner table drinking it. So this horse had quite the reputation. She could leap any fence. She could take watermelons right out of the field. A horse so fast that ice didn't even stop her. A horse that understood conversations. And a horse who would sit at a dinner table and drink at her leisure. That's quite a horse, even if she is an old, mare who sticks and bones. Now, unfortunately, there was reports coming in from all over the city of these prized horses. The owners were finding them in the morning in the barns frothing at the mouths, covered in sweat, their manes and tails snarled and unbrushable. And other people reporting that they were hearing what sounded like hoof prints running across their roofs in the middle of the night. What a curious tale. But the old man, he took this didn't matter to him because his mare was supernatural. Nothing was going to mess with his mare, old Sansuki. But his neighbors started to tell him, no, you should put holy water, boiling holy water, around the barn to protect her. If the Nain Rouge rode that horse the way he's ridden these other ones, he'll certainly kill her. With the way that the owners find them in the morning, she'll have a heart attack. No. He didn't believe in this. But it started to weigh on his mind. And the more it weighed on his mind, the more he thought, maybe I should. So it was on one such night that he decided that he was going to put the holy water, sprinkle it around the barn. And he had just walked out of his house and started walking towards the barn when the doors of the barn flew open. And there was Sansuki, baring her teeth, snorting, clawing the ground with her hooves. And what sat upon her back? The Nain Rouge. And before he could sprinkle the holy water on the ground, the Nain Rouge gave a mighty kick, and the mare laced forward to make that night gallop across the rooftops. Now the old man was so furious that he flung the container of holy water and hit the Nain Rouge. But he didn't knock him off. So off on the gallop they went. And the old man was so distraught. Oh, why didn't I do this sooner? Why didn't I do this sooner? Well, the next day, he went back to the barn, and there was Sansuki, just as all the other horses had been. Covered in sweat, frothing at the mouth, her mane and tail so snarled that he would never be able to brush it out. So the next thing he did, he sprinkled the holy water around the barn. But unfortunately, within a few days, a great fire came and was burning everything down. Now, the last that any of his neighbors saw, the old man had gone into the barn to save Sansuki. But neither one of them ever came back out. For years afterwards, his neighbors said, maybe Sansuki and the old man went back to the devil where they belong. And that is the story of Sansuki. And that is the end of our tale. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed my telling of the legend of the Nain Rouge. As far as I can tell, that is accurate for the story of the Nain Rouge that I can find. I researched it from a couple of old books. They're actually on the Gutenberg Press, the free site. they're very old, so it had to enlarge it and read it. Now the story of Sansuki, I've heard a couple of different versions of it, but being a storyteller, I can have some liberties with it. But almost all of the legends that I've heard of the old mare or Sansuki involve the Nain Rouge riding the horses until they, couldn't stand, and riding them across the rooftops. The thing that made Sansuki so interesting was the fact that she had a supernatural presence to her, that even the neighbors were like, hey, what's going on here? No way a horse that old and that, raggedy can jump that fence. And yet she, was reported to do it daily. So, like I said again, I hope you enjoyed my tale. And that's the end of our storytelling. So if anybody has any final questions about Nain Rouge, about...
Is there any indication as to, like, besides like a small child, like any kind of creature that it is, like any correlation?
It's they say if you research the different countries and cultures and folklores, he's referred to as a dwarf-like creature, very similar to even like the leprechaun.
Okay.
But when you read through the folklores of different countries, you will find a similar character in all of their tales. From Ireland, Scotland, France, Germany, Italy, they all have their own interpretation of this creature. And for some of them, he's very good. For some of them, he's very bad. So it depends on their interaction with the creature, and if they see that he's a good thing or a bad thing. So, but the Nain Rouge is his roots are very French based, and even though there are Native American legends about little people, and the Nain Rouge was considered a nature spirit, it was the French who gave him the name, the Nain Rouge. He's also called the Red Dwarf. So he's quite infamous here in Michigan. So there's the story that I just told you is like all the information on him. So he, I don't know, he's a very unique element of our history, and the fact that it was documented that a fortune teller told him about the Nain Rouge before he even came to Detroit, and that just the mention of his name brought him forth into interacting with Cadillac, and then all the appearances of him afterwards have, caused nothing but problems. So, it's kind of like, does the disaster happen because he showed up?
Right.
Or is he showing up because there's a disaster about to happen?
Right.
You can see it, both ways.
It's like the Mothman.
Yes. Yeah, we were talking about that in the cryptozoology, how the Mothman is, that's also a creature that's been seen all over the world, and people have documented, experiences with it, but it's one of those creatures that's considered a harbinger of doom. Yeah, because every time they show up, bad stuff happens. Mm-hmm. So anybody else? Okay, well, thank you for coming tonight and listening to my tale.